I guess this one would be very appropriate since I'm heading towards my friend's Matt, his house in Spokane. So we're gonna call this one Matt. You know, it's been so long at this point, but way back in my teenage years when I lived in Boise, Idaho, and I lived at the Idaho Youth Ranch or something like that. I forgot. I think that's what it was called, the Idaho Youth Ranch or something like that. And I lived there with a lot of other people. My roommate was a skinhead. Yes, a skinhead. His name was Bill Morrison. I remember that very vividly. And Matt was a tenant there, and that's where I first kind of knew of him. And I remember in the early days we would make fun of you because you wouldn't want to get out of bed. Your room was always a mess. You're always kind of grumpy. I kind of remember that. Sorry to say that, but you were kind of grumpy. But we would play games together. We'd go do stuff together. And I remember out of all the people there, I tend to gravitate towards you out of all the other people because, I don't know, we just kind of clicked, I guess, you know. You had a very rough upbringing. Your childhood was very traumatic, to say the least, you know. You had been burned at an early age as a very young child. And maybe in a way you felt like you never really truly belonged with, you know, you were always kind of an outsider. And I always considered myself kind of an outsider for different reasons. And so maybe that was the thing that kind of drew me to you, is that we had a kind of a same type of origin story, maybe, just a little bit different. And at one point, I remember we had left the home. I mean, at some point we had left the home after 18, and you had gotten into a little bit of trouble. And I remember I was financially in a hard place also during that time. And you put yourself into more trouble, but you did that to keep us, you know, afloat, so to speak. And I didn't forget that, and I always appreciated that you were willing to put yourself in more trouble in order to help us out. And I appreciate that, even though the end result was not good, but your intentions were very good. And of course there was a lot of memories, you know. I remember when you had that station wagon, and we took a trip, and at some point you had accidentally cut off somebody. They got mad at us and literally was threatening to, you know, to kick our ass. And I remember that, thinking how scared I was. And then sleeping in the back of that station wagon, I remember how uncomfortable it was. And we were out in the middle of nowhere. It was like, I want to say like Pendleton or something like that. We were on our way to Oregon, and it was so cold in there. And I don't even remember if this was the same trip, but I remember we had to hitchhike for some reason, and we ended up getting a ride from somebody, and I was so tired from walking, I just fell asleep pretty much instantly as soon as we got in the car. You know, and I remember going to visit your girlfriend's house at the time. I think her name was Joe, and thinking, okay. And I remember just being very like, all right, what am I gonna do while you guys are hanging out, you know? And then at some point, you know, I moved away. You know, I had to go back to Portland because I got in a little bit of trouble. And I went back home to Portland, and you stayed in Spokane. And I remember that. And even though you're 5 hours away, I still came to visit you. And at that time, you had gotten married shortly after that, and you lived in Spokane still, and I came to visit you, and I remember that. And I would still make the trip to come visit you. You were the only friend from Idaho that I've stayed in contact with, you know? and I'd come visit you, and then some things happened in your life, you know, some really hard times, and I still came to visit you. And all these years later, you know, I've tried to come visit you as much as I could. There was a time when you wrote me a bunch of letters, and I kept those letters, you know, and they meant a lot. You know, it was nice, and it really meant a lot to me that you wrote those letters to me. And I would come visit you as much as I could. You know, a lot of things are going on in my own life, you know, between breakups and having kids and job, and it was difficult, but I would still try to come and visit you as much as I could. And, you know, looking back, and it's amazing how our lives have taken very different roads, but yet we've remained friends all these years, you know. Your life has had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of troubles, and so has mine, you know, and somehow we've still remained friends after all this time, and I think, you know, it's stood the test of time. You know, where we are at this point in our lives is a different road that took us to where we're at. You know, but when you think about it, our lives could have been very different. I mean, one decision different, and that choice could have taken us down a different path. And, you know, and I appreciate our friendship, and I hope you do also. And, you know, certainly there's people who question, you know, why we're friends, I'm sure, to some extent. But, you know, there's something to be said about loyalty, and I think that's a big thing for me is, you know, I'm not God, I'm not a higher power. You don't have to answer to me. I don't have to answer to you about the decisions we've made in our lives. That's up to somebody else, you know. My friendship isn't, you know, it isn't okay only if you have made the choices I would agree with. You know, it's not conditional, it's unconditional. Your love of your children is unconditional, right? Well, I think your love of your friends could be unconditional also. You know, it's not up to me to agree with the choices you've made. I may state my opinion or be like, maybe I don't agree with some of the choices you made, but ultimately it's up to you and it's up to me, you know, in making those choices of our own lives. And I'm glad, you know, we still have our friendship after all these years, and we're still able to, you know, we might not see each other for half a year or a year, and then we could still hang out. And it was like, no time has gone by, you know. It's not like, you know, when I was 16 and now I'm 48. A lot has happened in my life. A lot has happened in your life. But, you know, it's still like we could sit at the table and eat and it'd be like, so what's been going on? You know, and I hope one day you can find some happiness, you know, something that you're truly happy about. And you can find some contentment and joy in your life. And, you know, and certainly I have things to be thankful for. I have a lot of things to be thankful for. You know, my kids, my health, my job. You know, and if there was anything that I would wish for you, Matt, is that you could find something that you could be truly grateful for and happy. And I hope one day you're able to find something that you can truly be grateful for and happy, and you know, somehow you know that you have made it, you know, in a sense, you know, you've finally found your peace. Anyway, I'll see you in person real shortly here. I'm about 3 hours away right now. And it'll be nice to catch up one last time probably for this year. But, you know, I'm sure there'll be many, many more trips in the future. All right, I'll talk to you soon, Matt. Hang in there, man.